I was in the Sahara Desert about a month ago. I'm 35, an archaeologist who loves history. My team and I were buzzing with excitement, ready to dig. The sun beat down hard, and all I could see was sand. It felt lonely out there, miles from civilization. But we were optimistic. We were sure we'd find something amazing. Then came the day we found that metallic object. It was half buried in the sand. I remember touching its cool surface. A strange pulse seemed to run through it. I thought it was just the heat playing tricks on my mind. I tried to focus on my notes, but something felt off. The shadows around us grew longer as the sun started to set. I spent more time with that object. As I did, my dreams became nightmares. I woke up gasping, heart pounding, visions racing through my mind. It felt like the air was charged with energy. My team started to act strangely. They whispered to each other, glancing my way. John, one of my teammates, couldn't stop staring at me. He kept mumbling about not awakening it. I wanted to laugh, but fear twisted in my stomach. At night, every sound made me jump. The calmness of the desert felt replaced by something restless. The days passed, but it felt like weeks. That object changed everything. I could swear I heard it pulsing even when I wasn't touching it, like it was waiting. One evening as I stood in front of it, the shadows stretched across the sand. The tent felt too close. I placed my hand on it again. It was warm now, almost throbbing. I stepped back, my palms sweaty. I could see the tension rising in my team. They avoided me, huddling in corners, talking in whispers. Something was wrong, and the weight of it grew heavier. One night I saw John at the campfire. His eyes were wild, like he'd seen a ghost. I asked if he was all right. He didn't answer. The desert felt colder, even under the scorching sun. My heart raced. I couldn't tell if I was going crazy or if the object was affecting everyone. I noticed the more I questioned it, the more distant my team became. One night I approached John. He was standing alone, staring into the flames. I asked, "What have you done?" He turned slowly, face pale. He said, "You shouldn't have touched it." Chills crept down my spine. Was I really losing my grip on reality, or had I disturbed something I shouldn't have? I nodded, feeling icy fear grip me. Silence fell, and I heard that pulsing sound again. I turned back, but the camp was empty, and I was alone. Or so I thought. I felt it, something watching from the shadows, something I couldn't see. It was wrong, and I had no idea what was waiting for me. I woke the next morning with a sense of urgency. My dreams had been filled with strange symbols etched onto the object's surface, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to return to it. The sun was barely rising, but something pulled me toward the site. As I stepped outside, the silence felt thicker than usual.
My team's tents were still, and I glanced around for any sign of them. I felt an odd mix of dread and curiosity. Maybe I would learn more about that object today. I hurried across the sand, each step building tension in my chest. When I finally reached the metallic object, it sat untouched, gleaming ominously under the morning sun. I moved my fingers over its surface. The warmth was now undeniable, and I could almost hear that pulse, low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Suddenly, I noticed something. The sand surrounding the object was shifting, not just from the wind, but more actively. It felt alive. I stepped back, heart racing. Then I heard it, a soft whimper, barely above a whisper, coming from the shadows nearby. My throat went dry. "Hello?" I called, voice trembling, but only the silence answered me. The air felt charged again, as if I had disrupted a fragile balance. I grabbed my notebook and started to sketch the object. My hands trembled as I wrote down the symbols I had seen during my nightmares. Maybe they were connected. Minutes passed and nothing happened. I almost relaxed when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, shuffling. I turned to find Sarah, one of my teammates, standing there. Her eyes were wide, and I could see fear etched on her face. "They're gone," she whispered. "Who? The others?" My heart dropped. "What do you mean, gone?" She shook her head, looking over her shoulder. I woke up and it was quiet. It didn't feel right. I think they left. A cold chill ran through me. Left where? I don't know, she said, her voice trembling. But John, he was acting strange before. I overheard him talking like he was looking for something. I think they went to find you. That didn't sit right. I felt sick. We need to find them. Just then, the ground beneath us shook, a low rumble that vibrated through the sand. Sarah grabbed my arm, eyes wide. I felt the pulse of the object quicken, as if in response. It was almost too much to take in. Then everything went dark. The sky dimmed suddenly, as if a storm cloud rolled in from nowhere. My stomach dropped. I thought of the shadows, the sense of being watched. "What's happening?" I shouted, trying to keep calm. "I don't know," Sarah screamed back, as the world around us warped. I turned back to the object. It glowed faintly now, pulsing faster as if it had awakened. I felt drawn to it, a magnetism pulling me closer, even as panic surged through my veins. Then I saw them, figures emerging from the darkness, moving towards us without a sound. My heart raced as fear bubbled inside me. "Sarah, we need to run," I yelled, but she just stood there frozen. I reached for her hand, but before I could grab it, the figures stepped from the shadows, and I recognized their faces. It was the rest of my team, but something was wrong. Their eyes were vacant, their movements stiff. "Help us," John said, but his voice sent shivers down my spine. That's when I realized I wasn't just trapped in the desert. I was ensnared in something far worse, and I desperately needed to understand the truth before it consumed all of us. I felt a surge of panic as I stared at my team. John, Sarah, and the others, once full of life, now stood like marionettes with their strings cut. Their eyes were void, seeming to gaze beyond me, as if their minds were lost in an endling abyss. "John?" I said, stepping forward cautiously. I reached out a hand, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he tilted his head, as if someone else was controlling his movements. "What's going on?" I whispered, a lump forming in my throat. Then, in one eerie, synchronized motion, they all turned their heads towards the metallic object. My heart dropped as I followed their gaze. The object pulsed with a strange light that flickered like a heartbeat, casting twisting shadows all around us. "Stop looking at it!" I shouted, but my voice felt small in the vastness of the desert. I turned back to Sarah, but her expression mirrored that of the others. The fear in her eyes was gone, replaced with an unsettling calm. "I need to know," she said, her voice flat. "It holds answers." No, it could be a trap. I felt tears prick my eyes. I had to get through to them. "Listen to me. This isn't right." Slowly, the group took a step forward, mindlessly approaching the object. I backed away, biting my lip, panic flooding my senses. I couldn't let them get closer. "Sarah, please," I cried out. "You have to fight it." But she continued to inch forward, and I felt helpless. I needed to think. Suddenly, I had an idea. I remembered the symbols I sketched in my notebook. There was something familiar about them, something I had ignored in my obsession with the object. With trembling hands, I pulled out my notebook, flipping through the pages until I found the symbols. I studied them, heart racing. Maybe they contained a key. I turned back to the group. "I know what to do," I shouted, my voice breaking through their trance just enough to catch a flicker of recognition in Sarah's eyes. "We need to reverse the symbols. It might break whatever hold this thing has on you." "Reverse?" John murmured, an echo of his former self surfacing momentarily. "Just trust me," I urged, excitement and fear mingling in my chest. "Please." Just as I began to draw the reversed symbols in the sand, the ground beneath us shook again, more violently this time. The object flared with light, and I felt heat radiating from it. Suddenly a cold breeze swept through, whispering words I couldn't understand. I glanced back at my team, and my stomach twisted. It was getting worse. I had to act fast. That's when I felt it. Something stirring in the shadows beyond the object. A presence watching.
I snapped my head around, and to my horror, more figures emerged from the dark, their faces indistinct, but their intent clear. There was no time left to waste. I needed to finish the drawings and pull my team away from the brink.
But as I scratched furiously in the sand, I couldn't shake the feeling that every line I made was leading to something I wasn't fully prepared to face. "Help us!" John's voice echoed again, and I realized this was just the beginning. I was about to uncover something monumental, something that threatened everything I thought I knew. I continued to draw the reversed symbols, my hands working on instinct. I had to maintain focus. Every line I made felt like a lifeline, an anchor to pull my team back from whatever nightmare had them in its grip. But the terrible pulsing from the object distracted me, as if it were alive and mocking my effort. "Come back!" I yelled, desperation crawling into my voice. "You have to remember who you are!" The figures beyond the metal object grew clearer, their shadows stretching across the desert like dark, twisted fingers reaching for us. I could feel the weight of their stares. Something deep inside warned me this was no ordinary encounter. They looked at us with an intelligence that pierced right through the panic, sending a chill racing down my spine. Keep drawing," I reminded myself, trying to drown out my racing thoughts. I could see the buried symbols beneath the chaos. They matched the ones I was sketching, whispering of hidden meanings meant to defy time itself. My stomach churned as I recalled the legends I had studied about ancient forces, forgotten entities, and civilizations that fell into ruin. Suddenly, I noticed something shifting within the group. John's hand twitched, a flicker of life within the void. "I can hear you," he whispered, a faint connection tethering him back to reality. I could hardly breathe. "John, fight it! You're not alone!" The other figures moved closer, their outlines jagged and flickering as though they were not wholly there. The air thickened, swirling with tension and fear. I felt like I was on the edge of something monumental, but I had no way of knowing whether it would be salvation or doom. I had to complete the symbols fast. As I swept a final stroke through the sand, a scream erupted from within the group. It wasn't an agonized cry, it was a war cry, a signal sent out to the dark figures closing in. My heart raced as I understood its meaning. Something sinister was about to happen, and it was not just my friends who were awakening. I looked back at the object and gasped. A beam of light shot straight up into the sky, piercing the twilight like a beacon. The ground shuddered violently this time, as if the very earth was unraveling under the pull of that light. I staggered backward, my hands slipping against the warm sand. "Run!" I shouted, my voice hoarse as I stumbled towards my friends. They swayed, the emptiness returning to their eyes, but John struggled against it, his face twisted in effort. He seemed to fight inside a battle I couldn't see. "Fight it, please!" But then, before I could reach him, one of the shadow figures lunged, reaching out with a long, shadowy arm towards John. I screamed, terror overwhelming me as I realized what was happening. It wasn't just about saving my team anymore. It was about saving myself. Just then, a sudden roar erupted from the metallic object, drowning out everything else. Light cascaded around me like a wave, and with no idea of where I would end up, I dove back toward the group. And that was when everything went dark. I woke up gasping, the taste of sand lingering in my mouth. I was lying on the hard ground, blinking against the bright sunlight. Surrounding me, the desert stretched on, barren and uninviting. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. Where was everyone? I pushed myself up, frantic. My mind raced back to the nightmare, the symbols, the shadows. Had they taken John? I felt an icy grip of dread. I needed to find them. I scanned the horizon, but there was nothing, just endless dunes and the azure sky. Panic rising, I forced myself to breathe slowly. If I was going to figure this out, I had to stay calm. I looked around for any signs of my team or the twisted figures. There was something wrong, something I couldn't shake off. The air felt different, charged, as if the world had shifted. After a few moments of gathering myself, I spotted it, the metallic object. It stood just a few yards away, looming ominously. It looked the same, but it radiated an unsettling energy. The beam of light I had seen before was gone, but now the surface sparkled with strange symbols. They undulated, shimmering as if alive. I approached cautiously, drawn to it. "John! Sarah! Where are you?" I called, hoping my voice would break the silence. No response. Then I noticed something in the sand, a trail of dark marks leading away from the object. My blood ran cold as I followed it, each shaky step deeper into uncertainty. The marks were unmistakable. They resembled the same symbols I had been sketching, yet simpler, primal. As I got closer, I realized they weren't just in the sand. They were pressed into my skin, memories surfacing that weren't mine. Suddenly, my chest tightened. I recognized one of the symbols. It represented awakening, not just from sleep, but from something darker. Panic recoiled within me as I thought of John's struggle. Had he truly begun to remember, or was something far worse taking hold? Just as I made a decision to search further, a rustle caught my attention. I spun around, heart racing. A shadow moved among the dunes, slinking closer. I squinted against the sun but couldn't make out a figure. It was too distorted, shifting like smoke. The chill of fear slithered up my spine. "Is someone there?" I shouted, my voice echoing bizarrely in the emptiness. No answer came. I felt trapped, as if I was being watched. Then I saw it, a flash of movement in the corner of my eye. Another shadow figure. It lingered beyond the object, just out of reach. My instinct screamed at me to run, but something compelled me to stay. Whatever that creature was, it was connected to the object, and possibly to John. I stepped forward, determined to confront whatever this was. That's when I saw it. The ground beneath the metallic object was cracking, revealing a dark void that seemed to breathe. My pulse quickened as the screeching echoes of my friend's cries echoed in my ears. I turned to flee, but the shadows closed in around me. There was no path left to escape. I was trapped in this nightmare, and I had no clue what would come next. I backed away from the cracks in the ground, my heart racing as I looked around the desert. The shadows shifted closer, and I could almost feel their cold breath on my skin. Panic threatened to swallow me whole. I had to move, but where could I go? The metallic object loomed behind me, and a flicker of movement caught my eye again. I turned to see a figure materializing among the dunes. It was hunched and draped in tattered cloth, and as it shuffled forward, the shadows seemed to retreat ever so slightly. My breath hitched. Was this the figure from my nightmare? "Who are you?" I yelled, more to call attention than to demand an answer. My voice wavered, and I felt small and vulnerable. The figure paused, silhouetted against the sunlight, and then it lifted its head. I couldn't see its face. A hood obscured everything, and I felt as if I was looking into a void. I hesitated, weighing my instinct to flee versus my need to understand. "Please, have you seen my friends?" I implored. The figure made no move and no sound. My stomach twisted with fear. Suddenly, it pointed toward the dark void beneath the metallic object. My heart sank at the suggestion. What did it want me to see? Ignoring the instinct to run, I stepped closer to the object.
My feet felt heavy in the sand as the ground cracked wider. The sense of dread intensified. Was I about to discover something that should remain hidden? I leaned down to peer into the void. It was deeper than I expected, a yawning darkness that seemed to draw in light. I could feel the heat radiating from it, yet the darkness felt cold and ancient. There was a faint humming sound, almost rhythmic. I recoiled, but a thought stopped me. Could I find John here? What if he was somewhere inside? I straightened and shot another glance at the figure. "If you know anything, please help me!" Without warning, the darkness surged, a rush of wind blowing sand around me. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes. When I opened them, the figure had vanished, as if it never existed. Just the shadows remained, swirling and contorting. I was losing my grip on reality. "What is happening?" I shouted into the emptiness. But the wind howled, drowning my words. The swirling shadows shifted, and I felt them close in again, pushing me toward the void. Instinct took over, and I darted away, just as something large licked the air behind me.
Making a desperate choice, I veered off, away from the metallic object. I ran toward the towering dunes, praying to find my friends, hoping that somehow they had escaped the same fate. Then I saw it, a flash of light in the distance. It drew me, a beacon against the shifting sands. But with every step, the shadows chased me, growing bolder. I could feel their presence, the whispers of ancient voices urging me to stop, to surrender to the darkness. "Not now," I gasped, adrenaline pumping. The distance shrank quickly as I sprinted, my mind racing with questions. Who was that figure? What did the void mean? And where were John and Sarah? Each question clung to me like a weight. I couldn't let them go. I pushed myself harder, the light flickering ahead. Then, just as I thought I was escaping, something cold wrapped around my ankle. I stumbled and fell, the sandy surface rushing up to meet me. Panic surged as I looked back, but the shadows had stopped, almost curious. I tried pulling free, but the grip tightened. Just then, a voice, low and guttural, whispered through the air. "Stay with us." I froze, a chill spreading through me as I realized I hadn't escaped anything at all. I was about to become part of a nightmare much bigger than I had imagined. I felt the shadows tightening around my ankle, and in that moment my heart raced with a mix of terror and desperation. "No! No! No!" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the wind. I tugged at my leg, but the cold grip only squeezed tighter. Panic clawed at my throat as I glanced back, unsure of what awaited me in that darkness. "Help!" I screamed, my voice cracking. I couldn't feel John or Sarah anywhere near. The waves of sand swirled around me, and I struggled to think. The light flickering in the distance felt like a distant dream, something I might never reach. I needed to break free. In one frantic motion, I clawed at the sandy ground, digging my fingers in, trying to find purchase. But the shadows only clung harder, as if they were sentient, feeding off my fear. "Let go!" I yelled, and summoned all my strength, yanking my leg again. With a sudden rush, I pulled free, rolling away and gasping for breath. The shadows lurked at the edge of my vision, but they hesitated, as if considering their next move. I scrambled to my feet and sprinted toward the light, every instinct screaming at me to survive. As I ran, the ground beneath me shifted, and my foot caught on something solid. I stumbled forward, falling hard onto my stomach. I braced for pain, but instead felt a strange coolness radiating from the object I had tripped over. Pushing myself up, I looked back at what had halted my flight. Half buried in the sand was a large, round, metallic disc, its surface gleaming unnaturally against the desert's dull colors. My heart raced, not only from fear, but from curiosity. What was it doing here? Before I could think too deeply, the shadows shifted again and closing in, and I knew I had little time.
I scrambled to my feet and rushed to the disc. The air around it felt charged, as if it hummed with energy. I didn't know what it was, but it felt important, maybe even a way to fight back. I brushed away the sand, my fingers trembling against the cool surface. Symbols and engravings covered the disc, glowing faintly beneath the dust. I only had fragments of time. The shadows were moving in on me. A low, ominous growl echoed from the swirling darkness. Just then, I heard a faint voice in the distance, a whisper of familiarity. "Help! Over here!" It was John. My heart surged with hope, and I turned instinctively toward the sound. But before I could step away from the disc, the shadows lunged forward, a tidal wave of darkness intent on dragging me back into the void. "Stay close," I shouted, half to John and half to myself. I reached down and touched the disc again. A sharp jolt of energy surged through me, igniting a spark of courage. It felt alive, like it was responding to me. "Please," I whispered urgently, "help me fight them." The symbols flared brightly, lighting up the darkness momentarily. I breathed in relief, but the shadows churned violently, angered by the light. Just as I gathered my courage to confront them, the ground beneath me trembled. And then everything went dark. I was plunged into silence, the whirling chaos fading into a thick blanket of inky blackness. I was alone again, suspended between fear and the hidden power I had just discovered. Would I find a way out, or would the shadows claim me for good? My heart raced as I realized I was on the edge of something much bigger, and I was about to uncover secrets that had slept for millennia. I blinked against the darkness, willing my eyes to adjust. I was still alive, but where was I? The chilling silence pressed around me, wrapping me in an unsettling embrace. I struggled to move, every inch of me heavy with uncertainty. Then, out of the gloom, a faint light flickered. It was like the embers of a dying fire, barely holding on. I instinctively shuffled towards it, my heart hammering. The light seemed to pulsate, inviting and terrifying at the same time. As I got closer, I could make out the outlines of forms, faint shadows moving in and out of the light. What were they? I hesitated, fear creeping back. But then I remembered the disc and the power it had given me. Perhaps this light was connected to it somehow. "John?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response, just the low murmur of the shadows. I took a deep breath, willing myself to push forward. I had to know if my friends were near, and I needed to understand what was happening. As I reached the source of the light, I felt a rush of air swirl around me. My heart sank. It was another object, similar to the disc, but this one was larger, illuminated by an ethereal glow. It resonated with energy, sending ripples of warmth through the air.
Then I noticed something etched on its surface, different symbols than the ones on the disc. My fingers brushed against them, and the moment I did, a surge of images flooded my mind. Ancient landscapes, massive structures, civilizations long lost. It was overwhelming. A sudden crash echoed, breaking my concentration. The shadows roared again, and as I turned, I saw them materializing at the edges of the light, drawn to its brilliance. They were relentless, growing bolder, solidifying as they closed in. Panic surged through me, but there was no way I could back down now. "Go away!" I shouted, feeling the warmth of the light wrap around me like armor. It didn't scare them, but it did slow them. I needed to make sense of these objects. Maybe they were the key to pushing them back for good. Just as I felt the light strengthening, I heard another familiar voice. "Over here!" It was Sarah. I whipped around, my heart leaping in my chest. The shadows hesitated, as if sensing the imminent arrival of help. "Sarah!"
I called out, but the shadows lurched forward again, chasing away the moment of hope. I needed to act fast. I focused on the symbols, remembering their resonance with energy. Maybe I could channel that power. With a deep inhale, I closed my eyes and reached out again to the larger object, my palms pressed against the cool surface. A surge of light burst forth, illuminating the darkness, pushing back the shadows. But as the shadows retreated, another sound rolled through the air. A deafening roar echoed all around me. Something was breaking through the darkness, a new threat emerging just beyond the light. Before I could process what was happening, everything around me began to tremble, and I realized I was at the eye of a storm about to erupt. I had awakened something ancient, and now I had to face the consequences. The ground shook beneath my feet, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. I focused on the light, trying to hold on to it as everything else felt chaotic. The roar grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. I was not just facing shadows anymore. Something else was here, something ancient and powerful. I turned back to the symbols, desperately searching for answers. They pulsated under my touch, and the moment I pressed harder, a wave of energy surged through me. The visions returned, flashes of civilizations and bizarre creatures lurking in the shadows. I gasped as the images shifted, revealing a massive figure, looming and imposing. "Sarah, where are you?" I shouted again, fighting against the dark silhouettes creeping closer on the periphery of the light. At that moment, the tremors became violent, and the shadows recoiled, sensing the chaos. Suddenly, I felt a pull, an inexplicable urge to step into the heart of the light. I hesitated. What if the light was hiding danger? But the shadows were seeking me with a hunger I couldn't ignore. I needed to act. With determination, I lunged forward.
The moment I crossed the threshold of the brilliant light, it felt like being submerged in warm water. I could sense a force working with me, feeding off my fear, my need to protect my friends. The air around me shimmered, and I opened my eyes wide in amazement. This was more than just an object. It was alive. In the distance, I spotted Sarah, standing at the edge of a crumbling crevice. She looked terrified. "Help me!" she screamed, her voice almost lost in the roar. I couldn't leave her. I was closer than ever to the truth, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was all slipping away. Just as I stretched out my hand toward her, the sound morphed again, a deep growl mingling with a rumble, and the ground cracked open. My eyes widened in horror as I watched the shadows engulf her, pulling her back into the blackness. "No!" Panic surged through me as the light flickered. I needed to make a choice. I was powerful, but so were the shadows. If I channeled everything I had, I could strengthen the light. But at what cost? Then I noticed something new in the light, a flickering shape breaking against the brightness. It was a key, or maybe a link to something buried deep beneath. My breath hitched. The history embedded in the light spoke to me, promising answers, yet threatening to unleash more terror. That's when I saw it, a massive form breaking free from the shadows, a grotesque creature emerging with eyes that glowed like embers. My heart sank as I realized this was the true disaster. I hadn't just awakened ancient echoes, I had released a terror long concealed. As the creature stepped into the light, casting an ominous shadow over everything, I knew I had no choice but to confront whatever this was before it consumed both me and the remnants of my friends.
I shouted, the urgency of my plea lifting into the shimmering space. I envisioned her clinging to the light, willing it to save her. As I shouted her name, the object flared in brightness. I could feel my determination intertwining with its energy, forming a brilliance that flickered dangerously. The creature shrank back, its shadows wavering as if they too were affected by my resolve. "Together," I urged, knowing I needed every ounce of strength. The symbols began to swirl, and a whirlwind of light surged forward against the encroaching darkness. For a moment, everything felt suspended in balance. The creature shrieked, a sound that sliced through the air, bewildered by this sudden shift in power. It hesitated, the shadows flickering, revealing glimpses of twisted forms that clamored to be free. I pushed harder. "Let them go!" The command burst free from my lips, a harmony of raw strength reverberating through the space. The shadows surrounding me pulsed rhythmically in response, caught between the light and the monstrous creature. The dark entity lunged forward again, an instinctive strike against the brilliance. But I would not yield. With a final powerful thrust, I merged my will into the pulsating light. "You are not meant to exist here." A shockwave radiated outward, and the light surged, enveloping me and the creature together in a chaotic storm. I felt the shadows shrieking, retreating behind the brilliance, a desperate attempt to resist this unforeseen force. As the two forces collided, the space around me warped, revealing fragments of lost epochs, and I could see moments of despair, the ancient civilization that had made this object, companions wandering lost in the desert, trapped in time. But just as quickly, I witnessed a glimmer of hope. Sarah's face materialized, illuminated by the same light. "Don't give up," she cried, her voice breaking through the chaos and connecting my resolve to her determination. The creature faltered once more, its form flickering in and out of existence. In that instant, everything collided. The energy enveloped us, and I dove inward toward the depths of the collision, a risky gamble to free my friends and dissipate the creature's grip on our reality. I felt the shadow lifting and twisting, fraying at the seams of its own existence. "Go!" I called out again. "We are free!" Light burst forth, brilliant and blinding, and I closed my eyes against it, surrendering to the overwhelming force. It rolled over me in waves, swallowing the darkness whole. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the sun-baked sand, disoriented and aching. Blinking, I focused on the world around me. The metallic object lay eerily still beside me, devoid of its previous life. It looked inert now, and I felt an odd mix of loss and relief flood over me. "John? Sarah?" I called, panic urging me to rise. And then, like awakening from a long sleep, they emerged from across the dune, confused but alive. "What happened?"
John muttered as he stumbled over, and Sarah followed closely behind, a look of bewildered wonder washing over her face. I felt tears prick at my eyes, overwhelmed by the sight of them, knowing we had escaped a nightmare. The shadows had receded, but I could feel the lingering weight of what had unfolded. As we gathered ourselves, an unsettling calm settled over the desert. The horizon felt wide, yet endless questions loomed over us like a specter. The experience had changed us in ways I didn't understand. Was the creature truly gone, or had we merely appeased it for now? I glanced back at the metallic object. Its presence remained, a haunting reminder of the unknown. What secrets were buried deep beneath the surface? I might never know. I had my friends back, but our fight had only deepened the mysteries of the desert and the shadows it held. I had survived. For now. Would it ever truly be over? Only time would tell. The desert around us lay still, yet winds whispered of ancient powers, and the horizon flickered with the weight of stories yet untold. As I scanned the infinite sands, I understood the true journey had just begun.